I've never actually used one of these before. It's just plugged right in. So what I'll do is whenever, so it shows like a whole panorama, which is super cool. So you can see us at any time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Neil's over there hidden, but Neil shows back up over here. If you want to be cut off, just do it. Pick a place, yeah. And if you talk or move, it's going to capture you.
Then it goes right to me.
And this doesn't really get this, but probably later I'll do a slide or maybe, so I'll put this on my channel for posterity. Any of you guys can go look at it later. It might even help with the writing of the paper. Yeah. What was your topic?
You're doing adultery.
I mean, hopefully not doing the thing itself.
No, that's not to do adultery, I would have to be married. And to be married, I could not be
in a very short time, you should do that because the paper is too very small.
I know that because I defined it in all paper what I mean by adultery.
Yeah, okay. So, anyway, so this will show, but because this big screen is right here, it's kind of showing an infinity kind of thing right here eventually. When I swap over and have my desktop, you see it moves that too. So, hopefully, it'd be nice if it at least if you can zoom in on this part, it'll be really grainy, but anyway, you get it. Alright, so we left off actually, let's take a look at the syllabus like I like to do. We got an hour and 15. So, we're doing this today. Nobody's doing presentations. Presentations are done. Everybody's got their grades, and I hope you're happy with them. You guys did very well on the last ones. I'm really happy with them. Made all the corrections. Okay, but this is our last full day of content. As for this, I'm trying to treat this like a study day. So, we didn't really have one of those for the midterm. We just I may have said, hey, look after this question or whatever, with the test right in front of you, but we didn't ever have a study day. So I won't give you a study guide, but by this day, Thursday, I will have the exam already either completely made up or nearly completely made up. And so, we can cover those. I can give you probably some questions I've used before or something that's like practice or something, literally related. In any case, that'll be a study day. And covering whatever we don't cover here, which it shouldn't be that much, but it depends on how the discussion goes today. So I'll stop talking with respect to that. That's all business items. We cover this today. That's the only new content of the week. This down here is just leftovers and that. All right. So I don't think we need to continue on this because we really did just kind of cover everything we needed to cover here, right? Covered Nicomachean Ethics 910, so on and so forth. Now, I have up here, by way of review, we're going to be using 1, 2, and 3 up here a lot, these 3 parts of morality, and we're also going to be using this a lot today, because what I expect to do is, hopefully we can get through the Augustine stuff today, and then we can get on to, okay, you said adultery. Was somebody else? I think you were going to do
adultery as well.
Okay.
Doing adultery.
Okay. Well, so one of these, since we only have 2 days left, and we have 2 more topics to cover, we'll do adultery, the topic of adultery today, since both of you guys are right on it. If we get to this on Thursday, that's fine. If we don't, that's fine too. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, cool. So we will save this for like the last 20 minutes of class. So if it comes like 20 till, and I'm still not on this, and somebody flag it for us. Okay, cool. Alright. And this over here, of course, we have as well. Just kind of recap. Okay, so let's jump right in. We'll start with some biographical details of Augustine. Born in Thagasse, Namibia, in present-day Algeria, North Africa. This makes Augustine an African, believe it or not. You guys probably knew this, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, especially a lot of freshman students get into the classroom in philosophy, they don't know this. They have no idea. They think he's, and it makes sense because if you look at these images, they're typical of Augustine. These are, they look Western, they look Caucasian. He was the father of Western theology, really, very foundational Western thinking. But this actually is the earliest known depiction of Augustine that survives to today. And that would what he would look like. Now, he died in 430, as you see, 430. But our earliest depiction is in 530. This does not mean that, like, if you're like, oh, well, that's 4:30, and our earliest depiction here is 5:30, and this goes today, of course. You might be thinking, well, they know what he looked like is 100 years after the fact. This is not the earliest possible depiction of him. This is the earliest one that we still have. Which means, like, there would have been images of him, like, throughout this whole time. It's just that this is the one that survives to today. Right? So it's almost as if, like, if you say, I don't know, it's about 1,500 years ago, if you were to 1,500 years from now, 1,600 years from now, you would say there are no more images of Hitler except for one that survives only about 100 years after. This would be around this time, but give it 20 years or so. Do we know what Hitler looks like? Of course we know what Hitler looks like, right? It's not just with the internet, but we know what he looks like, right? There are pictures and so on. So, they wouldn't know what he looks like. This is what he looks like. So, in any case. For people who think this is important with, like, identity stuff, this is often a surprise to them. His father was a Roman colonist. His mother was a Berber. We'll get a little bit into what Berbers are here a little bit. You guys know what Berbers are? It's like indigenous ethnicity group in North Africa. They don't call themselves Berbers. They call themselves Amazigh. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Berber shares the same etymology with barbarian, because the Romans would say, well, these guys are fucking nonsense. It sounds like blah, blah, blah. So some got called Berbers, some got called barbarians. So same word to them. Let's see. Yeah, ethnic group indigenous. And so right here we have an expert saying, of all the fathers of the church, St. Augustine was the most admired, most influential during the Middle Ages. Augustine was an outsider, a native North African. His family was not Roman, but Berber. He was a genius, an intellectual giant, and he certainly was. He laid a foundation. Really, like, this is the most important, most influential church father throughout all the medieval period, like, bar none. You can see here his life and travels. Hippo, that's what he's named for. He was born in Tagaste. This is where he, at the end of his life, would become bishop. Born in Algeria, right here. Carthage over here. So you can't go to Algeria. Actually, about a year ago, I visited Tunisia. This is where modern-day Tunisia is, right here. Carthage, it's an ancient city. You know Carthage, the Carthage of, like, Hannibal, the guy who took elephants. It was the whole Carthaginian empire. But he started up here. He didn't start right here. He started up here in the empire, Carthage. Went over here, went over the Alps, tried to attack Rome. So Carthage and Rome have always been at it. But that was like several hundred years prior to Augustine. Augustine happens in the 300s-400s. But so I visited Carthage. You can't get into Algeria today. You need, like, a visa. Those are really, really restricted. It's like a pretty dangerous place. It's pretty close off to tourism. But there is a cathedral of Augustine there. But Carthage is still pretty important in his life. He traveled here. This is where he got his education. This is where he became a teacher and so on. It's where he fathered a child out of wedlock. You guys know about that? Yeah. I love there's a saying, I think St. John Vianney, it's in Father Michael's email signature. It's, he says, not all the saints began well, but they finished well, or something like that. So that's like, that's definitely Augustine. Augustine's like one of the best devotions to have. Like, if you struggle with, like, becoming a saint, because if he can do it, we can do it. And then so, as you know, he struggled intellectually as well. He passed through issues of, Manicheanism, Neoplatonism, Arianism, and so on. Until finally settling on Christianity, which really was the faith of his childhood. His mother was a Christian, of course. His mother, St. Monica, is just a beautiful story. A very beautiful story about, mother who just never gives up. Like, I'm sure you guys know about St. Monica, right? If you don't know about St. Monica, it's just amazing.
And it's fitting that her feast day is right before.
It's very before. Yeah, it's really beautiful. When I did this trip, I actually, this isn't my journey map, but after Tunisia, we went to Rome, and we're able to. I was just looking around. There's so many saints in Rome. Obviously, so many churches. There's a church every time you throw a stone. There's a church, and we went into St. Augustine Church or some kind. And lo and behold, didn't realize it, but that was Monica's tomb right there. And it had been there for like the last, 1,200 years or something like that. Pretty amazing. Okay, so he travels to Rome to, I guess, after becoming a Christian, converting, taking his studies there, becoming a priest. At Milan, I think is when he first became a bishop, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. And then shortly before he returns home, I think is when his mother passes away, because his mother is like chasing him the entire time. And, because she had wanted him, she had pursued him to become a Christian out of this deep, deep motherly love. It's really beautiful. And anyway, she dies, and then for whatever reason, he returns back to his home, Hippo, near his home, Hippo Regius. Regius just means in Latin something like royal, so the royal colony of Hippo or something. Anyways, and that's where he stays the last, decade or two of his life. And then I think his remains are near Milan, actually, not in, but near, about 30 minutes outside. So you will see his remains. And also Bishop Ambrose, St. Ambrose, who played a fundamental role in his conversion, also his remains, his entire body, you can see it's in Milan as well. Okay, so a little bit about Berbers. So we got here hand decoration here that's pretty typical, like the henna tattoo stuff. Couscous is just kind of all over North Africa. Zinedine Zidane, you guys know Zinedine Zidane, right? Soccer player. He's a soccer legend, yes. Soccer is amazing. He's the guy who, he headbutted that other guy in the World Cup final, World Cup, yeah, and, got big. Don't do that. He's a really great player. He played for the French national team when they won the World Cup. I think it was 2000. I don't know, or 2000, 2008, something like that. He's retired now, though. I think he also ended up being a coach, but, we also have so he is Berber, Berber descent, Algerian, although he played for the French national team. You also have these people who are Berber descent. So Donatus in the 4th century, Arius in the 4th century as well. You can see their respective heresies here named after them. Arianism not with a Y, but with an I, because that's different. but you should be pretty familiar with it. Arianism is like a so it's a Unitarian sort of heresy, right, where God is ultimate. He creates, is that right? He creates Christ.
Christ is a created being, yeah.
Created being. So Donatus it has something to do with donation and offering up Christ as a gift, but or something like that. But the details escape me right now. I don't remember it quite. But yeah, so these are both heresies in the church, and I know there are a ton of people who are like, gosh, well, how do we know not? These aren't the real truth. That we, it was just the church fathers just suppressing these truths, and it was just a struggle of ideas, and that, well, if you want somebody to blame, you can blame Augustine. He's the one who was basically putting these heresies down, and he was the one that was especially particular Arianism and Manicheanism. Mm-hmm. So and then that looks weird if you're an identity politics person, because now you're saying something bad about an African. Augustine. Why would you do that? Anyway, yeah, I think that whole, this whole narrative of this beats out this, and the people who are suppressed need to come back. It's just a ridiculous heresy.
Your ideas are just wrong, so you should just stop. Right. It doesn't matter what you look like. Your ideas are just wrong.
Right. So this is interesting because it kind of shows you, this is, of course, current day, but you've seen throughout the 4th century, and then you see, of course, it's on a conquest of the 8th century. If I were to ask you what characterizes this area of North Africa from west to east, what language? Of course, Arabic. What religion? Of course, Islam. That's how we know it today. But that wasn't like that until the 8th century. Prior to that, it was Latin speaking and it was Christian. Through and through.
In Tunisia, the Arab, were they the Turks? During the Islamic conquest, they killed almost every single Christian in Tunisia. Mm-hmm. And then that's why St. Louis came down in the 9th Crusade and tried retaking Tunisia, but that was a failed crusade.
Yeah. And so I went to Tunisia, like I said, last year, and it's really beautiful. It's one of those crossroads civilization areas where you have, of course, the Islamic language, religion, and you have Arabic. But all the signs are both in Arabic and in French because they have had recent French. They were a French protectorate in the 19th century, at least, and onward. And they won their independence, of course, they're independent now. Same with Algeria. But they also, so they've got Islamic, Arabic culture and heritage. They've got French heritage. Many people still kind of consider themselves of French origin, because there's a lot of mixing and so on. They've got Roman heritage as well. A lot of the ancient Carthage, you can see. I went to a place in ruins where they had mosaics. Just kind of, it was amazing because these mosaics, you could see some of them on the ground. Some of them were just they had been excavated and kind of just laid against a wall, out in the open, where the elements could just beat on them and anybody could take them. So it's pretty amazing, honestly. I was like, if nobody wants these, it's going to be hard to put in my carry-on or something. But it was just amazing, this 2,000-year-old mosaics just kind of right there. It's got a whole Roman heritage and history, and then it's got, of course, it's Christian heritage and history. And so all these elements blending together. And that, of course, doesn't even mention the Berbers. So when I was visiting this, we went down from Carthage to Kairouan. Kairouan is, has anybody ever heard of that city? Kairouan? No. It's about 3 hours. It's probably, this is such a massive map, but it's probably right around where this is. And it takes 3 or 4 hours to drive or something. Kairouan means Little Cairo. It's actually where they filmed one of the Indiana Jones movies that was set in Cairo. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that. Anyway, but it's the 4th most holy city in Islam. Kairouan is. And we toured that city, and one of the guys was really kind and he showed us around. He showed us that there were 3 different kinds of doorknobs, and they would identify the family that lived there according to the door knockers. And some of them had a hand and a ball, and some of them had a lion or something. But there was standard 3. There were 4 of the Jews. They don't live there anymore. They got expelled. But that's a different story. So there are 3 now. You've got the Berbers, that would be a group that lives among them, and then you've got the Arabs, and you've got the Bedouins, which are mostly nomadic, but I guess they got homes now. So it's interesting. So you've got also that culture and heritage here. So very highly diverse area. Okay. What I had you guys read was the City of God. And interestingly, have you all taken Latin yet?
Last year.
Civitate Dei. Interestingly, the Latin, I recently learned this because if you know a little bit of Latin, you might know that city, of course, means Civitate Dei, God, city of God, right here. Civitate, actually the regular form, I forget, I think it's nominative or something like that, of city is civitas. So this is a modified form of civitas. It actually, because there's an implied preposition here, it means away from. From the city of God is actually official type. Away from the city of God. Did you know this, Andrew? No. So we covered this. It's fascinating. I recently learned this. So not just city of God, but it's away from the city of God. The idea here is they had 2 cities, metaphorically speaking. City of God, which were the believers, the city of man, which were the pagans. They coexisted in Rome, but they were in conflict. And so the whole city of God traces the spiritual aspects of this conflict. 22 books in all, concerns the fall of Rome, which is quite fascinating. I don't know, there are about a dozen dates for the fall of Rome, and this is one of them. Because it got attacked several times. It did a lot of attacking, and it got attacked several times. You might say that the empire being replaced by the republic was a fall. Some people, my favorite date for the fall of Rome is this, because 410 is easy to remember. It also corresponds with the city of God. Do you remember what year Augustine died?
430.
Yeah. This means that he was alive for this, and he saw this with his own eyes. So this is really significant. This is really fascinating, actually. You rarely get, especially with somebody of Augustine's ability and stature, being able to comment on historical events like this. That's pretty amazing. So give us a commentary on what actually happened. So he argues this, It argues that, seeing all the destruction, that the presence of the Christian religion and its values is what enabled Rome to survive as long as it did. And that the reason why Rome fell was because it turned its back on Christian values. What do you think about that? Do you find it plausible? Do you buy it?
Well, if we take the Roman Empire all the way to Byzantium, technically Rome did not fall until like 1250.
That's true. Or you could go to the Holy Roman Empire, but there's 1,000 different days.
Yes.
But let's say the reason for this invasion.
Rome has
all Visigoths.
Yes. A lot of it was also because Rome decided to not have a standing army anymore and decided to not protect itself. So the Visigoths were
So maybe it was the lack of military strength that enabled them to be defeated.
Well, the difference was Christianity spirit, like 323, was only tolerated. It was tolerated only for less than 100 years before the sack of Rome. And then there's the fifth religion. You're right. It was only a few. So yeah, it's something like 75 years.
You're right. Okay, so say that again.
So there would have to be. I only read the one chapter. They argued that there were Christian values that were imbued in the empire before Christianity was a thing.
Yeah. So you could argue the opposite way. You could, like Marcus Aurelius, although he's writing 12 centuries before this, he argued that Rome was becoming diluted and overtaken because of Christians and Christian values. So that they were the problem, actually. Mm-hmm. And Augustine here's arguing the opposite of that, of course. But you could argue this, although he's long gone by now, because of what you just said. What happened about 100 years prior to this?
Constantine,
yeah. So early 300s, you have Constantine making Christianity sort of like the accepted religion. Not necessarily, I don't know if it's a state religion or if it's required or anything like that.
Make it this way.
Yeah, it's certainly permissible, at least, if not required. So he puts a stamp of approval on it, and then that happens for about 100 years. So you could say, well, it's because of the Christians that we fell. We had just stuck to our old pagan ways, and we'd be fine. They ruined it. That's one way to go.
I would argue that the Christian government has the duty to protect its citizens. And in that, the Roman Empire failed as it put more importance on Constantinople in the east rather than protecting the west and the old city of Rome. Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to launch some of these concerns.
History buff.
We might say like it was rank of military strength, prowess, whatever it may be. Right? We'll put strength up here. I can say it was like mismanagement. For some reason, they appropriated, sent all their interests and concerns, and there was way emphasized on the east, and that's why Rome fell, in particular, just the city. Okay. Any other possibilities? And none of these are what Augustine says, of course. Augustine thinks it was needs to be. Let's say, turned away. Christian values. Okay. But another one might be like, there's several theories. Like, not all historians agree with Augustine.
The big one is Attila the Hun.
Yeah, he doesn't come in.
By that, what I mean is roaming tribes of nomads, such as the Visigoths, but throughout the entire empire that overly stretched the military capacity of the legions.
Yeah, so you could say overexpansion, honestly, and then you've got now invited problems into your empire because you're making a lot of people mad, right?
Well, the farthest west of the empire went was Hadrian's Wall in Britannia. And then the farthest east was almost to the Kievan Rus in Germania. and then the empire really never went more south. Like, they kind of just stayed in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
But then they got split a few times.
Big desert there.
A lot of infighting too.
Yeah. You might even think like trade and economic instability of some kind. Whatever that amounts to. But all of these reasons have been offered, but that first one is like very, very glaringly like odd. You would probably admit, like, not a lot of historians are going to agree with that. But I want to propose a case for it. First of all, this agrees with every philosopher that we've looked at in this unit. Right? We said that with Plato, let's just recall our other here. Plato says, rhetorically, what's more central for a city? Basically, infrastructure or virtue. Of course, he says it's rhetorically because he knows it's going to be virtue. Right? You could have both, that'd be nice, but ideally, if you could have only one, you're going to want virtue. Because we ask ourselves, well, with respect to our society, which one of these are we really good at? It's not this, it's this. We have really good roads, we got literature in our house, we got plumbing. It's pretty good, like it could be worse, it could be better, but it's pretty good, right? And this is the one we focus on rather than virtue. And we thought, well, how's that going for us? Not well, right? We got a lot of corrupt people who can build stuff. So he agrees. And then also, Aristotle agrees. Says that whatever's called city must be concerned with virtue. The city's community for living well or flourishing. Political community does not aim simply at survival or staying alive, but it aims at thriving, aims at a good life. So it aims at thriving, flourishing, living well, and all that comes about with virtue, not with economic power or military strength or something. So we have Augustine saying the same thing. He makes the same exact argument, except in reverse. Because Plato and Aristotle and Aquinas, for his part, although we're not reading him because this is ancient philosophy class, he makes the same argument as well. He argues also that virtue is foundational. He agrees with Aristotle on this. So 3 of those, but they're all kind of making the case beforehand. They're theorizing, conceptualizing in the abstract. Augustine, he's making the case after the fact. Like he's seen what doesn't work, he's assessing, and he's like, oh yeah, if they had virtue, this wouldn't have happened. So he agrees with them, although it's interesting from a different perspective. But back to Constantine. So Constantine happens about 100 years. Let's take a look. Constantine, emperor. You have to say ridiculous. Constantine the Great. Here we go. So he was emperor from 363 to 37. And in that time, I forget, not sure when, I don't know if it was towards the end or what, but this is about 100 years, again, because Rome falls, sacked by the Visigoths in 410. So about 100 years, let's say, roughly 100 years pass between when this happens and Augustine comes on the scene and Rome falls. They didn't remain strong in Christian values the entire time. There was like this like lukewarm waning away from the values, right? Because this is paradoxically what happens in any religion, any like ideology, any political beliefs or anything like that. If you suppress it, it makes it stronger. And if you don't suppress it and you allow it, it makes it somehow like more culturally accepted, then it's gonna wane in its strength somehow. Does that make sense? This is what Tertullian says, where he says the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Right? Because when you're oppressed, paradoxically, it makes it much more lively and genuine and authentic of the faith. But when you sort of let off, right? And this is actually during the 4th century. This is when the church fathers show up. And this is the origin of the 7 deadly sins, as we saw when we looked at Acadia and depression and so on. Evagrius and and so on, and Cassian, they are working in the 4th century. All those desert fathers are out in the desert because they realize, well, okay, we've just been persecuted. Diocletian at the end of the 3rd century, so the end of the 200s. And this is a nice reprieve. I'm glad Constantine did this because we no longer have to get killed. That's cool. But they escaped to the desert, but they didn't return after it became legal. They stayed in the desert because they realized, oh, well, gosh, now this is like the only authentic way to like live out my faith. If I go back, it's not as genuine, So it's very interesting. So this happens. You have a falling away from Christian values, and that's the argument that Augustine is making. So, but now we're still talking in the abstract. What, in particular, Christian values is he talking about? And you guys are probably going to get this one way, but when I have to talk about this with students in the general study, it takes them a while because they don't want to admit that Christian values are good. They'll say, proselytization, like forced conversion or something like those are Christian values. It's like, give me some, I tell them, I say, look, it's not, usually when people have a problem with Christianity, it's not Christianity they have a problem with, it's people who misrepresent Christianity. Like the values of Christianity itself are pretty good. That's why we like forgiveness. That's a pretty nice value, right? So you can say it, you can put it in terms of values, you can put it actually in terms of virtues. So that's what we've been talking about, right? Virtue. But if we were to, let's say, Christian versus Roman, make a little list of the competing values. What are these Christian values? No, it's just mentioned forgiveness, but not there. What else?
Love of neighbor.
What is that?
Love of neighbor.
Yeah, love of neighbor. Yeah, not just loving those who love you, but loving people who hate you. Patience. Good.
Chastity.
What is it?
Chastity.
Good. Which ones are Christians known for? These and comfortable this. What else? Love, forgiveness,
Veritas.
Yeah. True love. We'll just leave that there. Period. And they are. I'll put that there because this often shows up in modern day understanding of charity, right? Giving, gratitude, or generosity, right?
Yeah. Reverence.
Reverence, good. Okay, so we can keep going, but maybe we'll add some more. But what about Roman values?
Legalistic.
Is that different from here?
The Roman values focused a lot on the self and on the importance of your name. So they're very similar to Homeric to Homer's.
Yes. And in fact, Nietzsche. So Augustine, you might be like, well, Augustine, you're just making this arbitrary distinction between Christian and Roman values, like, right? Nietzsche, one of the most famous atheists in all history, makes the same distinction. He's going to align more with these. He likes these more rather than these because he thinks these are weak. Here's another humility. That's weak. Why would he? And he calls these, Nietzsche does anyway, the Judeo-Christian values. He calls these the Greco-Roman values because you're right, they're very, very similar to the Homeric values. Very similar. So honor, but what else? Because we read some on those Homeric virtues, and what were they? Honor and what else?
Influence.
Influence? What do you mean?
Stage power.
Yeah. Power, for sure. What else?
Public opinion.
What do you mean by that?
The way that others view you. So outside of honor, but the way that others view you.
Yeah. So we'll keep that list. But there's also this glory. You can be honored. You can be glorified. Receiving glory is like, so for example, like going to the Olympics and earning glory is like, well, you've earned some kind of, by glory, I mean you've earned some sort of renown,
and recognition for your achievements. Like that is definitely a virtue.
Self-centeredness.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Like,
egotistical, or what's the other word I'm looking for? And back to me later. Oh, narcissistic.
Greatness.
what's that?
Greatness,
Greatness. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
in, like, when Aristotle says, like, magnanimity,
Yeah.
it's not the same as what we think of Christians. It's magnanimity.
Yeah. Because notice, remember we said we compared magnanimity over here, like Aquinas' magnanimity here, by Aristotle. We mentioned this when we were going through the Aquinas' virtues. That right here it's going to look something like, if your father's a senator, you got to step into the big shoes to fill, right? Over here, it doesn't matter what your vocation or your occupation is. Everybody could have certain greatness about them because everybody's made in the image of God. So that looks a lot different. Right? Like over here, you have to have a certain line of work and come from a certain family. Over here, you're not who you are. You're loved by God. Like, that is really foreign to this. But here, not only greatness, personal, but like family name, so on and so forth. But, okay, so you know how this looks really different, and we'll continue to add some things because it's not just these that they thought highly of and they tried to imbue. It's also many other things. So, if we look here, and I'll give you a summary slide of the kind of virtues we'll see. But at the beginning of this chapter, it's titled this. I'm not sure if this is his title or later commentator's title. It says the kind of happiness in life truly delighted in by those who inveigh against, but basically attack the Christian religion. I did not frame this for you or before you went on to read this. So if you read this literally, you will be confused because he's talking about people who are happy because they attack Christians. Like if you read it, obviously he's being sarcastic. He doesn't mean these things. Air quotes, like of the kind of happiness and life truly delighted in, right? He doesn't actually mean that these people are truly happy. And so this chapter in particular concerns how they really lived according to the values they chose. Were they really happy? Did that sort of life bring about true happiness? And that's what this is all about. So, let's see. This is a summary of the kinds of, not just virtues, but the kinds of behaviors and desires and things that they pursued. All right, here are the kind of things they indulged in. Violence. Y'all remember, you've seen Gladiator. I hope everybody in here has seen Gladiator. There's a sequel coming out too, so please watch it. Where you watch the sequel. It's great.
The sequel was not good.
Is it already?
It's not good.
Okay. Obviously, it's not going to be as good. And they don't have the original actor and so on, but yeah. But it's supposed to be something.
It's literally the same plot. It's not.
Recreate greatness like that.
It's
not. Can't recapture like in a model. But anyway, Violence, Gladiator, Conquest. They did pursue this, and you might think, well, gladiators are fun, but this is really dark. Like Americans, the people in the West, they like violence, I guess, like gore and action movies, right? This stuff is real. Like at the end of the Gladiator, at one of the end of the fights, after he's killed a few people in order for him to survive, he's like, "Aren't you entertained? Are you entertained now? Are you happy now that I've killed these people?" Like they don't seem to get the gravity of the situation, right? And that's really dark. Like this would be like the behavior of the spectators would be like if I were to now in my culture, my society today, just revel in watching people fight to death. Like let's say in a prison yard. Let's just say like throw in a shank and let them fight to the death, because again, these were prisoners. Let them fight to the death, and that'd be my entertainment for the evening. That's messed up, right? But even worse, it would be these guys were fighting against trained warriors, and they were prisoners, so maybe like kidnapped or something, slaves. I would have them fight. I don't know. The prisoners could fight. I don't know, a SWAT team in riot gear, and they got like modern weapons, and then the prisoner can have the shank, the homemade weapon, but they've got to fight this guy in body armor. That, of course, like that. If that were my entertainment, then that's exactly what we saw them doing. Conquest, of course. I might tell you anything about that, but all right, sex, pederasty, and prostitution. You know what pederasty is?
So it involves children.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You're thinking pedophilia is a related word? Yes, you're right. This is the widely accepted, widely practiced institution of older men with younger boys.
Oh yeah.
Like the kind of protection, take under your wing. I'll show you, the ways of the world, and I'll give you connections and stuff. And then the boy would, in exchange, provide the old man with sex and companionship. That is what, and it was widely accepted, widely practiced. Prostitution. Hey, if you're like, I'll have students sometimes who are like really sex positive and be like, sex workers? You mean sex workers? No. And where do you think they were getting these prostitutes?
They were slaves.
Yeah.
I can tell you that even today, the majority of prostitutes are in some way, shape, or form enslaved or abused. Actually, if you're looking for a good book, Disposable People by Kevin Bales talks. He is a reporter, but he also works for the United Nations, and he gives you case studies and then also personal stories of human trafficking and slavery throughout the Indo-Pacific region. And he writes it like a novel.
Oh.
And it's very easy reading. I highly recommend.
What's it called?
Disposable People by Kevin Bales.
I'll look that up. That sounds really good. Yeah, you're right. These people, they're not going to be Roman citizens because it's a very honorable thing to be a Roman citizen. They're going to be getting these people, they're going to be slaves. They're going to be the product of this, right? The men, if they don't kill them all, which, strategy was to not kill everybody. They were going to conscript you into their army. It was actually pretty genius.
Yeah,
they would conscript your children, maybe kill them, conscript the children, have them grow up as half Roman, right? Rape the women, raise the kids as half Roman so that they have a stake in the empire, right? It's a really, really fascinating show called The Barbarians on Netflix. Have anybody seen it? Have you seen it? Oh, it's fascinating. So it's like how
Germanic
AD 6 or 7 or something like that. Yeah, it's one of the very rare occasions where Rome suffers a really terrible defeat. Spoiler alert, but you can look it up in history books. The guy that they raised, he ends up being a general, and he betrayed them.
The Germanicus betrays Varius, and they basically lose 2 or 3 legions.
Yeah,
it's the Teutoburg Forest, and Rome never recovered from them.
Okay, so slavery, of course, for work, for pleasure, entertainment, and so on. Idolatry, worship, and influence. We'll go through most of these lavish lifestyle riches. Okay, so let's take a look at these in particular. So, and we're going to read excerpts from. Really, the whole chapter was really about a paragraph long. So I hope you read it. It's not that long. But again, he's being sarcastic here. Let there be a plentiful. Like, if you saw this, Augustine saying, this is Augustine speaking, but he's not speaking in his own voice. Like, don't put this on a bumper sticker. Augustine. You know it says this. No, it's not.
Contextual.
Plentiful supply of public prostitutes. That's like me saying, well, let's just go jump off a bridge. I don't actually want to do that. So, for everyone who wishes to use them, especially for those who do poor to keep for private use. And that sounds good, except once you realize where they're coming from, and that they're like basically, widowed and being raped and so on. All right, party. Let there be erected houses of the largest, most ornate description. In these, let there be provided most sumptuous banquets. Everyone who pleases may by day and night play, drink, vomit, dissipate. Well, I was on board until you said vomit. It didn't sound so bad. Man, I guess there'll be some of that. And then dissipate. That seems weird. But what does this mean? Actually, let's go to my trusty source here. Dictionary. We look up this word. It comes from Latin dispatus, of course, to scatter, disperse. Right? Also, let's look up dispater. Right here. Disperse. But let's look at supo. Throw or scatter. It means to be torn apart. Obviously, like, if you're going to dissipate, this usually is made in terms of like water, dissipating a liquid, another liquid, or an odor dissipating in a room or something, right? That's spread on scattered parts. But he's saying this with respect to human beings being dissipated, torn apart. And this gets back to one of those like really interesting models of sin, views of sin, theologies of sin, where it's like splitting you apart, literally. Unity would be unity with God, that purity, where purity is like a oneness with God, and then sin is like a torn asunder. And I hate sorry, Sunday. His last name is Sunderhoff. But to be torn asunder, right? That means, because in German, Sunder means, Sunder means to be like a rent apart, disintegrated, right? Torn apart. You're no longer an integral whole. So, people like this probably, like people who act one way in public, but act completely wrong way in private. Like, this is what this means. So, okay. If there be ever heard the rustling of dancers, the loud and modest laughter of the theater, the succession of the most cruel and most voluptuous pleasures. That sounds bad, of course. He's referring to the games in the Colosseum, of course. Maintain a perpetual excitement. Would that be a problem? Because that's kind of like we like today, perpetual excitement, right? Why is that so bad?
It's the brain rot.
Yes. Yeah, we should be really familiar with this. Because if you keep pursuing pleasure after pleasure after pleasure, you're going to need more.
Our society is inherently hedonistic when it comes to.
Mm-hmm. And okay. And his happiness, if such happiness is distasteful to any, let him be branded as a public enemy. And if any attempt to modify or put an end to it, let it be silenced, vanished, or put an end to. Like, that means what you think it means. Like, so let's kill this dude, tries to stop us. Let the rich abuse the poor as their dependents to minister to their pride. But this one's interesting. Let the people applaud not those who protect their interests, but those who provide them with pleasure. Now, this is where it starts hitting close to home, if it hasn't already. Like, this is very similar to our society, because those who provide us with pleasure or entertain us, or whom we celebrate, that is celebrities. Celebrities usually entertain us. Like, name a celebrity. You might be like, well, Mr. Rogers, he's dead now, but he's not a celebrity in like the celebrity sense, though. You know what I mean? LeBron Bros. Or Steve Irwin. They have a celebrity for celebrities. But celebrities are usually entertainers. They provide us with pleasure. We like those people. We applaud them, we celebrate them. And he says here, let's do this, but let's not do that. Of course, this would be the right one. Applaud those who protect our interests. We don't do that. That is the Roman stuff, and I don't think we do either. But who protects our interests?
My boy, Rand Paul.
My boy. My lawyer.
My boy, Rand Paul.
If it comes to that,
So they're
politicians, lawyers, police, parents. Those are the real MVPs, right? Those are the real heroes. But we don't celebrate those. We only celebrate. So it's like, low, Augustine. Okay. Lest no severe duty be commanded, no impurity forbidden. Wouldn't that be nice? If we didn't have to do anything that was a severe duty. Right? Obviously, this part, no impurity, nothing to leave. This is very close to what we are like now. American freedom is the kind that's, don't tell me what to do, I can do anything, or don't restrict me in anything. This is very different from classical, especially Augustinian freedom. So this sounds super familiar, but let no severe duty be commanded. I mean, what now would look like is, okay, you don't have to do it. You don't have to. Let's just give you a paycheck, welfare or something, maybe let the state take care of you. You can do like basic, easy duties. But we're not going to make you like serving the army or anything. We're not going to make you go backbreaking work and build roads and stuff. What's going to happen is you're not going to have roads. You're not going to have an army anymore if you don't command these things. Some things are hard to do. And the most worthwhile things are going to be things that are really difficult to do and you don't want to do at first. But once you do them, they're worthwhile. Let kings estimate their prosperity not by their righteousness, but by the servility of others. You know what servility means?
servant.
Yes, more than just
you like the servant, like a brown nosing.
yeah, brown nosing. That's a good point. A good way to say it. Servility is like I'm just going to keep telling you that you're right and everything right. But no, some politicians who are like this, right? People who aren't necessarily interested in, well, let's see, maybe Trump's different, but this was the big criticism that he faced, right, in his first term, because he kept firing people around him, right? Maybe he was dredging and cleaning the swamp. Okay. Well, it looked like this to a lot of critics. They said, well, he just wants a bunch of yes men. He wants the people to tell him what he wants to hear, and if they don't, then they're gone, right? That's what it looks like to the outside. But this would be the right way to go, estimate their prosperity or success by the righteousness of people around you. But then, and then idolatry. Let these be reckoned the true gods. Right here we have a Roman god Mercury, who is Hermes in Greek, god of wealth, god of fortune, fertility, and even thievery. I don't know why you need a patron god of that, but there you have it. He was fleet of foot, and he could steal, I suppose, as well. But look at these things. Like, these are the things that we like. Wealth, fortune, fertility. Oh, that's much sex. Thievery. We're going to take things that we want. And this is the attitude that the Romans took. Let these be reckoned true gods who procure for us this condition of things, and let us keep it. Let them be worshipped as they wish. Let them demand whatever games they please. We'll just do whatever they want. Those are going to be true gods. Now, I don't have to tell you this, but I usually say this. Because students, your typical average student in a secular setting is not going to understand why this is a bad thing. So, let me explain. These, he's saying, are the true. These are the ones we believe in. Because it helps us to live how we want. So, philosophy of religion, along with, like, your typical attributes of God, they're like considered like classical attributes of God, like omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, and so on. There's an additional one, at least, there's several more, of course, an additional one that philosophers of religion like to talk about, and it's being worthy of worship. God's got to be worthy of worship. Because, and I say this, it's like, imagine that you think of somebody who like you highly respect, right? And that you really highly esteem, hold in high regard, and maybe want to be like them, but you really respect them, like they are like an idol of yours. And you have some personal relationship with them. Maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a grandparent, see like. And then ask yourself, would that person just let me do whatever I want to do? And still think the same of me? Probably not. Right? Like, my idol is not, if I know them, right? It's not just some TV star or something. My idol is probably going to hold me to a high standard. Like, they're worthy of a high esteem because they themselves are worthy. They themselves are at that high level. Not, just do whatever you want. But they're holding the line with respect to the standard. And they're not just going to look at me and be like, do whatever you want. No, they're going to, and most students they'll be like, oh gosh, they'll kind of get stuck here and they'll be like, well, I don't want a guy like that, just so much greater than me. You can look down on me. That's not what they do. Our idols and our people we respect, they don't look down on us, and this is why we respect them. They pull us up to where they are and say, be like me. And that's what God does with us, right? Be more like me. Like, be like that you can do it. I believe it. But they don't do this, right? So if you're thinking like, obviously you can have arguments for God's existence and compare like omniscience and omnipotence with these Roman gods and so on. But this would be a major red flag, because if you're just believing in a deity because they let you do whatever you want to do, that's not good, right?
From my understanding of Roman pagan worship around this time period, the only god that they really cared about was Jupiter as the patron of Rome, and the other gods were just kind of like yes men for Jupiter. And as long as they made their sacrifices, that's all that really mattered. And it was really transactional. So it was, we'll sacrifice this bull, we'll win the battle.
Yeah.
And if we didn't win the battle, it's because we didn't sacrifice the right bull. But it was also like, you just sacrifice, what you want to like Hermes, for example, and he'll just give it to you. It was just a transactional relationship, and and it wasn't what we would typically say would be true worship, which would be a back and forth type of relationship.
Good. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. That seems a lot closer to, if you're thinking of the youthful dilemma with Plato and Socrates, it seems a lot closer to aligning to just almost a monotheism, where you only have to worry about one God rather than like all these different things. They're right. All right. So let's look at summary, kind of summarizing things in general. He says here, pagans are no wise concerned that the republic be less depraved and less licentious. They're not concerned that the republic be less immorally bad or less evil and licentious, like less, when it comes to extravagances, so on, sexual or whatever. Only let it remain undefeated. Yeah. They say, only let it flourish and abound in resources. Let it remain undefeated. What he means by that is this. This. Right here. So, military, let's have greater defeated, that is, from outside source. And then let it flourish and abound. Not flourish in this way. Well, old city like Eudaimonia, that would be Aristotle. They're not doing that. They're not flourishing virtue. They're wanting to abound in resources. And so what he means is this, that let us have economic greatness, military strength. And in fact, his real view, because this is being sarcastic, is this: don't do that. Don't do that. Rather, focus on Christian values instead. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, but comparing ourselves to today in our society, this is something we're pretty good at. Not this part. These. We're really, really good with our military. We're like one of the best militaries in the world. I think, as far as defense spending, last I checked, we spend more than all other countries in the world combined. It's insane. It's really ridiculous. And you would think they were being like, yeah, but alright, economically, we're an economy. Even in our bad dips in an economy, when it's not doing so great, our economy is really strong. We're one of the best economies in the world. We're the best economies historically. So we're really good at this, and we're really good at this. And that's just what Ralphs too. They're really good at both of those, except, oh crap, we forgot to do this. Here's the thing. When I was trying to make a case for this earlier, I forgot to mention this. Because the varying opinions and theories about Rome's fall will basically remind us, there are all these things. They got invaded also. Overexpanded, invaded, dismantled, and so on. Augustine would still say, no, because at the core of that is they turned their back up. They were not virtuous. But how does that make sense? Well, if you think, why would you be invaded? These guys were not unprovoked, these Visigoths. They're being nice to their neighbors. They're not going to their neighbors asking for a cup of sugar. Right? They're invading it, raping and pillaging, killing it, and then conquering their lands. That's not being very nice. They're being really, and so that is, they're going after these things, and they're going after, and being violent, and so on and so on, and trying to destroy. So that is a vice. That's not a virtue. And so these things, they would be okay with this. Christians, would they be okay? No, they would be okay with that. Unnecessary. Just going and conquesting and so on. So, that was part of Augustine's point, is that because they're not doing these things, right? They're not going to their neighbor and just loving them and asking for a cup of sugar. That's why. This is our concern. Every man be able to increase his wealth so as to apply his daily prodigalities, so that this powerful may subject the weak for your own purpose. Now, until you got to this part, this doesn't sound that bad. Because is there anything wrong with just being rich? No. It's not. It's how you spend that. Right? How you use it. But daily prodigalities, you know what that means? What prodigal means?
It's like frivolousness.
Yes. Frivolous, wasteful. And so basically, like, if, the reason why we don't like billionaires, you guys hear about that guy, CEO or whatever, he got, like, assassinated.
The internet's blowing up with absolutely deranged things.
And people are defending the gunman, whoever that might be. So we're okay with people getting rich, or at least should be, but it's what they do with their money. And apparently, they're okay with this guy dying because he didn't do the right thing with his money, or whatever, or with his company, or whatever, right? So we're okay with people having money. It's just what they do. And so somebody who daily wastefulness would be like blowing it on women and drugs, like on a daily basis. That would not be good. So, okay. So now, this gets the idea down. But before we run out of time, I want to get us back here, because we were going to talk about adultery, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So we have about 12 minutes left. It's not a lot, sorry. 11 now. And we'll go like we did before. We're going to choose adultery, and then we are going to determine whether it should be illegal, make the legality of that case. So why is it morally right or wrong? First of all, adultery, is it wrong or is it okay?
It's morally wrong.
Morally wrong. Okay. What do you mean by adultery? You said you defined it.
By adultery, I mean the sexual contact of oral, vaginal, or anal sex between a person that is married or with a person that is married.
Okay. Okay, so I like that definition. However, it leaves out whether this is a betrayal or not. Does it have to be a betrayal? Does it have to be cheating? Because a lot of people will look at adultery and be like, "Oh, that's cheating."
I argued that it had to be that it did not matter if it was betrayal or consent.
Yeah. So because a lot of people will say, "Look, if you, as long as you don't cheat, like if you were in agreement, like you could have a pass, or like bring in another person to the marriage, be a throuple or something like that, right? Then that would be okay. It wouldn't be considered adultery, like technically speaking. But you're saying no, it would be adultery. Why?
I'm saying it would be adultery because it would be adultery because by definition, adultery is having sex while already within a marital relationship.
Okay.
Even from a legal perspective. Even from a legal perspective, yes. And then I cited the state of New York that defined it as very similar to what I said. And it was a Class B misdemeanor still in the state, but it has not been prosecuted in almost 20 years.
So we're just looking at the etymology here. Adult, right? Violation of conjugal faith.
Mm-hmm.
So we take that etymology and definition. It doesn't necessarily have to be cheating. It could be adultery and also be cheating, but it could be adultery even if they know about it and allow it. Because conjugal faith, conjugal means union with. Faith means you made a vow. So, I like to tell students this because they'll resist this. They'll be like, I don't know, it could be okay if they would agree with it. They just don't, you just need their consent. They think the consent is like the ultimate thing, test for like whether you can do a thing or not do the thing. It's ridiculous, especially with sex. And it's like, no, because I always tell them about this guy, Arianism. This guy had the other guy's consent, and he's in prison. It's just like he murdered and ate a voluntary victim in 2001. He had consent to kill that guy, and because look, they did the investigation, they have all the digital trail, like it was all consensual. But you can't do that to her. So there's some things you just can't do, even if you have somebody. Some say
goes to like even like suicide. They're going into the other thing.
Right.
Suicide. Because the other guy is
right.
In order to give consent, he had to have like a suicidal mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like the guy with the suicide pod, he's being prosecuted right now for murder because he helped a lady commit suicide.
Yeah. Okay, so by definition, it's a violation of the vows, and I like to tell students this because they don't get it. I say to them, look, so on your wedding day, you take a vow, right? And according to the vows that you say, it's just between you and this person. There's no like, placeholder for this person in case there's anybody else. Like, that's the contract that you're saying publicly. And you're saying, like, and if you're thinking about it, even if you go to the courthouse, you do it in a public manner because it's on public record. Like, I can look up anybody who's married in whatever state they got married and just find out, the date and call, just publicly available information. So you make this public. So if you take all those elements and you think of an analogy here, imagine that I were going to, like, donate like $3 million. I make this public announcement. I'm going to do this good thing. I'm going to donate $3 million, let's say. I don't have that, but if I were to donate, like, say, to the Everglades Foundation, right? And I make this really public. Well, suppose I later go back, doesn't matter, like 6 months, hopefully it's longer than that, 10 years, doesn't matter. I go back and I say to them, look, man, I do this privately because it's a shameful thing, right? And I'm like, I really want to, I don't have the money, kind of modify this, and then that's it, right? So then I don't actually pay, right? And do you think that would be like a modification of the original pledge, or would it be a violation of that original pledge to donate the money?
Be a violation.
Yeah? Why do you think?
Well, especially because you're looking at, there is so much, there's an element of the person now that you are giving this, say, 3 million toward or whatever, is expecting 3 million toward. And so if I put that in a marriage concept, in the marital union, that person is expecting all of you at all times. I mean, that's the covenant. Like, this is all, and so you can't give partial, you can't give less than what you're committing.
Yeah.
And so, so it's like you're not giving the full that you said.
People might have different intuitions on this, like whether it's modifying or violating. I think it's a good analogy. It's not perfect, but I think definitely in the marriage case, I think it's not a modification. I think it's a violation.
It comes down to whether you think the original pledge really had value as the words themselves, or if it was like some sort of ambiguous spirit of the promise. Like, well, maybe not $3 million, but some large amount. It was $2 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And you could say, but if you really take the original pledge as what you say is what you are going to do, then yes, it's a violation.
It's almost like, why make that public announcement at all? Like, what does that sound like to the people who are viewing that public pledge? They later find out that you didn't actually do it. It's going to look really bad, right? I mean, the public hates that kind of thing. And you might be in legal trouble, too, because I think legally, in some area, some jurisdiction, that would already be a contract in and of itself because you've done it public, even if it's a.
Well, what I'm afraid about is what Joe was commenting on with laws. Michigan, all these other states have similar laws and have penalties, fines, even imprisonment for certain periods with adultery, but are not enacted upon at all.
Right. Okay, let's get to that.
Yeah. And if I could just, all I was going to say on that, though, too, is just that because I think people then see the circumstances of why adultery might happen and different things and be like, well, it might be justifiable.
Yeah.
Like, there might be all these broad things that happen or whatever happens that influence that act of adultery. Hence why we haven't seen any legal ramifications.
Right.
Ever or rarely on adultery.
Okay, so here, you're right about that. Most students don't know that. In Maryland, it is illegal, and there's a fine. It's $5. I'm wondering, like, is that like for instance or partner? I don't know. But anyway,
One's cheaper than prostitute.
and how are they gonna keep track? So the reason why it's not prosecuted, it's because it's not worth the money, right? You got to pay people to be in court and to try these things, and pay lawyers, even if it's public, and that's just not worth cost benefit to get $5 after an afternoon's worth of trying. That's ridiculous. So that's also a very old law. So $5 is a lot more, back when this was passed. But you have the law in this case where it's still on the books, but you never never enforce it. Like, what's the use of that?
Well, it's like in Vermont. This was something that we used to say all the time when I was studying. Criminal justice, there's a law in Vermont that says it is illegal to leave a fresh baked pie on a windowsill on Sunday. Well, why was the law created? Because people would go to church on Sunday. I know it's crazy, Vermont, the black hole of religion. People would actually go to church on Sunday, and they didn't want wildlife coming through the town while nobody was, actively in the town, which made sense. But today, it's still, you can still technically be fined for it because it was never abrogated.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I wish I was cop just to get someone in trouble for that.
I mean, but then what would the DA prosecute it? You can charge somebody. Well, will the DA pick up the charge?
Let's think about this though. So it is prohibited, but like a slap on the wrist, even if you paid the $5, which you're not going to be charged. But the reason why, so if we get into like at fault versus no fault divorces, and you used to have to show a reason why your spouse is at fault, and that's why it does matter now, but that's not really needed for this conversation. So we know it's prohibited, but slap on the wrist behavior, it's $5 fine. But what to do with that? Is there any benefit in like having a law on the books that we never enforce? Like, because think about what COVID just happened, right? You still see signs. I don't know if you see them around here, but I'll see them in universities that I'm in. I'll see them in stores I'm in. They'll say, stay 6 feet away. Or masks are required in this building. Like, is there any value in having that up? Obviously never enforced. Or you're like, no, let's just remove that. What would you think? If you were to vote, like, as a voter in Maryland, and this came up, should adultery still be on? The law books. Don't do it. Because here's what's going to happen if you remove it. Like, not in the COVID case, we remove it, maybe nothing happens, it's fine, whatever. Maybe keep it there as like a reminder of how bad things are, whatever. But if you remove the adultery law, remember what you said about the standards of law, if you lower them? Like, if I don't enforce, or if I lower standards, then that could have disastrous effects for everybody. Now they're going to look at that and think, I think this is a unfortunate thing that people make this connection in their minds, because with whatever is legal must be okay, right? We talk about this with if you legalize pot, I guess it's morally okay. Like, they just think this automatically. So if now headline news, adultery is now legal, like, that's going to have some effect on people, isn't it? Right. It's going to be like, well, that's just fine, right? I would be shocked if it had zero effect. And then you're going to grow up in a society where, even though you're not enforcing the law, you're going to grow up in a society where kids just know that it's not. So what's wrong with it?
One of the arguments I made for why it should remain illegal, because at least what I have so far, tell me if I'm not doing this section correctly, I didn't state like what should happen with the law, if it should increase. I just stated that it should remain illegal. And it was basically like, as Plato was adding to, the basis of morality is found in the house. And if we find that in the house that contracts can be broken, or that if mistrust is a positive thing, what does that say for the broader society? And then move that into Aristotle about a virtuous society, and then the existential will lead to entropy in a society from those actions.
Yeah, you're right. That's a much larger conversation that you're so right to get into when it comes to in the paper is how this relates to the home. The rules of the home. So yeah, go explore it that way. You don't have to, but you could go the way of, if you keep it prohibited, what should the fine be? Should it still be $5? Should it be no fine? Should it just be that stuff? Should it just be, I don't know, community service? Should it be greatly increased? So obviously you don't want to execute people for it, but what should it be?
So I guess my question is, in the paper, should it be, it is illegal, it should remain illegal, and then I think it should be raised, it should be lowered, or like I should actually add that into that section of the paper?
You can, yeah, if you've got room and you still want to make that case, you don't have to though, but I'm just giving you that case, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I like the instructions, they were just kind of, they're very open.
Yeah, so, okay. That concludes, sorry we didn't talk much more, God, it flew by, we had a lot of stuff covered, but any other last thoughts, concerns, questions, anything like that?
I guess just one objection that I raised for this was the objection of open relationships, and then I kind of also went into like you don't actually open relationships aren't a thing. They're not really a relationship. You don't have trust, jealousy, and then also it just leads to polygamy, which is also illegal.
Yeah.
Except in the state of New York, where bigamy is illegal, but not polygamy. So, can you marry two people at the same time and make it a throuple, and then it's not illegal anymore? And that's the question that Enzo and I were kind of joking over.
It's like, can you get to 3 without first passing through 2? Sure.
Like,
Mathematically, or something.
it's totally complicated tax codes, but I think the way that New York State, based on hearing just what you said, gets around this is just there's one marriage. Like, if you go around marrying again and again and again, like, that's going to complicate things.
I think the taxes just go household instead of married. Yeah.
But then you've got multiple houses.
But then
We don't think taxes that big for the kinds of, like,
what's the implication for federal tax at that point? Because federal taxes still use married or single.
Yeah. So that may be the thing they're thinking.
Good tax burden.
All right, guys, that's it for today. All right, I'll see you next time. And the next time, of course, is a review day, and then we may get to discussing our last topic here, if you'd like. It's up to you. Because that may tie into this topic as well. So if you want to explore that, it's totally fine as well. But that's the idea. So yeah.
Is the final cumulative, or is it everything from midterm up to here?
Everything after midterm.
Okay.
All right, guys. I'll see you next time.